So I was watching a video about gaslighting, and I ended up doing this thing where I made a comment after a comment after a comment, like, because it snowballed, and it happens a lot when something triggers me, and then it snowballs, and I write like a book. So I thought if I could just like make this video, I've never made a video before, but I'm going to start making videos discussing my experience with abuse. And I have a lot of experience with abuse from a lot of different abusers. It's not just one. It's my parents, it's my brother, it's my ex, it's my husband. I mean, it's just over and over and over, okay? And the video was about gaslighting, right? And it just sparked something. Like, I was like, oh yeah, before any of the violence started, he started with the same argument about the fact he had no clothes every morning, right? And the thing is, it wasn't my fault that he had no clothes. It was actually his own fault that he had no clothes. So I had to explain in the comment why he had no clothes. That's why the comment just kept getting longer at this point. He had no clothes because he has this weird habit where he overpacks, right? And so I had to do backstory after backstory after backstory. It didn't quite make sense, the comment. So I was like, I'm going to make a video, all right? And I've never done it before, but I'm going to start making a series of videos so that this stops happening, okay? So I'm hoping Sebastian does not come in again. I've tried to make this video 8 times and deleted it 8 times because he keeps coming in. I want him not to do that. I don't think he's going to. I think he's going to listen this time. He's little. I don't want him to hear it. I wanted privacy when I'm talking about this because it's his father that I'm talking about. So, what happened was, when me and my husband first got together, we were in high school. But then we broke up and we weren't together, and I broke up with him for my extremely abusive ex, Bobby, who I have 3 children with, and he is now in prison for abusing one of those children. Alright, and I can go on and on about how Bobby affected me and changed me so deeply, and how that is what led me down the path of being an easy target for Matt. But I'll take that for another video because I don't want to make the videos too long. But he moved in to my trailer, mine. I lived there, right, with my 2 children, and I was pregnant with a third. He didn't move in when I was still pregnant. He was just sniffing around, trying to convince me to let him move in, because at the time he was newly broken up with the mother of his two children, and he didn't. He's never admitted that this is why, but I don't think he really wanted to be homeless. And so he was like, oh, this girl from high school that I used to date, maybe I can convince her to take care of me. I think that's what it was. I don't think it was motivated by him loving me like I thought. I think I fell for it. That's what I think. And he will never ever admit that that is what occurred, but I'm pretty positive that that is what happened. Because he was like, oh, I don't really have any place to go. Maybe we could be roommates. And I'm like, if we're trying to date, we should not be roommates, Matt. We shouldn't live together this quickly. It's not okay. Like, I was like, I like you. I don't want to do that. And he was like, well, I like you too. That's why we should live together. And I'm like, you don't understand. If we like each other, the worst thing we could do is try to live together right now when we're just starting to talk to each other again after being broken up for, 7 years. I broke up with my ex. I was with my ex for 7 years, and then I broke up with my ex, and I was pregnant with the 3rd baby, pretty pregnant, and he wanted to talk to me again, right? And he had been with his ex for 2.5 years, and they had broke up, and they had a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old boy. And he was living, so he couldn't live with me. He was living in motel rooms for work because his job was on the road. He worked for Osmos Utilities and traveled all over from state to state and lived in the free motel rooms they provided. And then the one weekend a month that he had to come home, he had to figure out where to stay for that weekend, right? So half the time he would go to his ex's house and stay there, saying he was visiting the kids. So I'm like, oh, you guys are kind of still living together. Like, you can't tell me you're not living with her. He's like, no, I'm only there for 4 days at the end of the month, every month. I come for 4 days and then I go back out to my motel room. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't have another place to live that's like that's your home. Like, the motel room is not your home. Like, that's your home, right? But he's like, no, she's on welfare. It's the Section 8 apartment complex, and she gets it for free. And I just stay there for 4 days to visit my children. You know, she's on full welfare. And then he stopped doing that because we were starting to get into a relationship, and his cousin had like this unfinished basement, like it was like, you know, cement walls and stuff, and he moved there, and that was in the same town as me, right? And so he's very close at this point. He went from being an hour away to the same town as me, right? And he, at this point, he had no way to get visits with his sons unless he went to visit his ex still. And he was trying to stop that, right? But family court had told him that he could not bring his sons to his cousin's house because of something to do with his cousin's past. That it wasn't an appropriate place for them to come spend the night. Because he explained that they wouldn't be staying in the basement, that they would be staying in his cousin's baby's room, because I guess they had a newborn at the time, and the newborn wasn't really using his bedroom, so they were gonna they said that if Matt brought the boys there, they could stay. And that was a weird situation because my husband wasn't paying any bills to live there. He was living there for free. And they were feeding him. Like, my husband wasn't even buying food for himself. They were fully feeding him. And then my husband would come and complain to me how rude and unfair they were, that the meals they gave him at dinner were too small, that he would eat like one full piece of meat, like a whole, you know, steak if they had steak dinner, and there was like a leftover steak, and he would try to go out and help himself, and they would be upset, and they'd be like, no, like, Eric, his cousin, is planning to pack that for lunch at work tomorrow. Like, I made extra so Eric could pack his lunch. You can't take that. And he'd be like, that's so rude. Like, I'm hungry, and I can't there's more food out there. Like, why can't I have it? And I'm thinking to myself, like, I didn't know what to say because we were, like, newly in this relationship, so I didn't want to be too critical because Bobby had always told me I was too critical. So here I am, like this, trying to walk on eggshells because I'm remembering it, I had it in my head, like, Bobby said I was too this, Bobby said I was too that, Bobby said this was what I did wrong, Bobby said this is what I did wrong. So I'm like, I don't know, you know, I'm trying not to, you know, make too many waves at this point because I'm like severely traumatized, damaged person, and that is why I was an easy target to not get in another relationship, right? If you have been abused, do not, because you will have that other person's voice in your head the whole time, and you will make bad decisions and overlook red flags. You will. It's how it works, okay? So I'm thinking, like, you're a little immature. Like, you're 24 years old, Matthew, and you're mad that your cousin and his wife aren't feeding you enough food when you should be feeding yourself food. I'm 23 and I have the same amount of kids as you, and nobody feeds me. I feed me and my kids live with me. Like, your kids live someplace else. Like, I didn't find out, like, a lot of the information. I found out Matthew has never been on his own in the correct way. Like, homeless on his own, yes, but never, like, had his own home, ever. Like, he lived in a tent in the woods. He lived in an abandoned house, but he's never had his own actual place. AJ, you need to be out of my hallway. Please shut my door now, please, because I can hear you guys arguing, and I need the video to not have children in it. Okay, stop, AJ. Stop, AJ. Stop. I just don't want people to hear me what I'm talking about. Okay, it's private. So, back on topic. I think she just locked me in. Okay, because I have a little eye hook lock at the top corner of my door, so I can lock it when I'm not in it, so that nobody comes in my room and rummages through my things, because I have some severely traumatized children living with me that were severely abused, and they, for some reason, cope with that by stealing. And they've stolen $300 out of my dresser before. They come in here consistently and dig through all of my belongings and take them, even if it doesn't make sense. Like, I think they thought tampons were candy once, and they took all the tampons. Like, I don't know. So I keep it locked when I'm not in it. And they can't reach the hook because they're 10 and 9 years old. The boys are. And I'm not mad. We had to adjust how we functioned because they kept doing it. And so I think she just locked me in my room. I'm gonna have to call her when I'm done on her cell phone and get her to let me out. But basically, back on topic, he had never, I didn't know this, but he had never at that point lived in his own place. Okay? When he was a baby, his parents broke up, and his dad took his mom to court for him and his older brother, PJ, and got custody. And then his dad's girlfriend pretty severely abused him. Like, the stories that he has and him and PJ have, it's awful what she did to them. Like, she was the really wicked stepmother. Like, they exist. They really do. I want a piece of candy really bad because I'm getting nervous and I eat my feelings. So, I apologize. Can't resist it at this point. It has to happen. It has to happen. So, back on topic. Then his father got him because the mother was mentally unstable, I guess, right? Which I know she is, because I know her. But I'm not going to say anything that bad about her, because, it's mental illness, you can't really control that. So, the father died in a car accident. And, his mother, even though they were separated or divorced, I don't know which one, she had the baby, another baby, a third baby, supposedly with this other man, not my husband's father, but she gave the baby my husband's father's last name, and my husband's father put him on his life insurance policy as one of his children, and she collected Social Security survivor benefits for that baby until he was an adult. So, somehow he got listed as the father. But also, the real dad, who she later married, somehow got listed as the father. And that is supposedly the biological father. And somehow she also got child support from that man for the same boy until he was an adult. So she got my money from the father dying from the government, and money from the biological father from child support court. From child support court. I'm not sure. I'm getting a phone call and it paused it, so I want to make sure you heard that. So it's like a weird situation. But she had that baby at the time. He was an infant. Father died. And she didn't take her kids back. I don't know why. It's a very confusing situation and a story. Very confusing story. She did not take her children back. She sent them somehow to live with his parents. One was like a teacher, and one was one of the correctional officers at a prison, right? And so he sent them. She sent them to live there. I don't know if it was forced because she was mentally unstable, or if she did it purposefully because she didn't want to deal with them, because Matthew was an out of control child apparently at this point. My phone is continuing to ring. Alright, so apparently they were not intentionally abusive people, but Matthew said that they were very strict Catholics and they would beat him with belts or like extension cords and stuff on his bare behind until he had bruises. And they did so because of the Bible telling them that you spare the rod, you spoil the child. So they thought they were being good people, but they were being abusive. They also fought very hard to keep Marcy out of our lives. And then the grandfather died a couple years into having Matthew and PJ live there. Okay. And then she died, leaving Matthew displaced again. Okay. And so at this point, right, Matthew is displaced upon displaced upon displaced, right? So he goes to live with, for a little while, his grandfather on his mother's side. He lives with his aunt on his mother's side. And then finally he lands with his mother. And his mother cannot handle him. Cannot handle him. And me and Matthew are in 6th grade together at Camden Middle School. And he is one of the bad kids that smokes a lot of weed, right? Wears ripped up jeans and skater shoes, and he rides his little skateboard. He's got the bangs in his eyes, and he's cute. He was cute. Okay, he was a really cute little 12-year-old when I was a little 11-year-old. We're in 6th grade together. He got held back a year, so he was a year older. He was 6 months older than me. Born in 1989, and I was born in 1990, so we were the same grade. And then she was like, can't do it, and then he stole a guitar, so he got put locked up in like a reform home, juvie, something along those lines. He was only supposed to be there for a certain amount of time, but he kept breaking out, which I don't know how you break out of juvie, but apparently he was able to do it with a other couple of boys or something, and he did it like a couple times. And then when he was going to his release date, he thought, oh, I'm going home, it's my release date. The judge was like, I see here that you broke out on such and such a time. And he's like, yeah, so? And he's like, well, extended sentence, you messed up. And he said that he never even occurred to him that could happen to him. So he ended up being there for 5 years, from the time he was 12 to the time he was 17. When he was 17, his mother had already remarried to the third guy, and she did not want him back. She was like, there is no place for you at my husband's home. And she's like, but my house is empty, so you, a little 17-year-old, can go stay at my house alone and figure that out for yourself. He's in high school, 17-year-old in high school. He wasn't due to graduate till 19 because of him being held back in pre-K. And that'll be that, so that you don't affect me and my new husband. You need to get out of my room. We already talked about this. Okay. Take your fruit cup and go. Okay. We've been talking. This is a private conversation. Okay. So, this is when we started dating again. He was 17, had just got out of juvie, and he was like, I still really like you. Like, you're like beautiful and smart and funny and blah, 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 blah. And like, will you be my girlfriend? And I was like this sweet little innocent, naive 17-year-old, never even kissed a boy yet. I'm like, yes, I'll be your girlfriend. And like, we just like held hands. Like, that's it. It wasn't like a real relationship where like you kissed or anything further than holding hands and hanging out. So that was our relationship in high school. Yeah. It's one of those ones you can't really count it because it was in like a childhood relationship, right? I don't know. I don't really believe it fully counts. That's my personal feeling, that it does not count. But it did, because we ended up getting back together. So he was living there, and she wasn't sending him food, nothing, right? He dropped out of high school, dropped out, got a job at a gas station pumping gas, a full service gas station, and used whatever money he had to try to, like, I don't know, take care of himself. And he didn't have a car or a driver's license, and he was in North Bay, and his job was in Camden. So he rode his skateboard, and this is like driving at 55 miles per hour. It's a 15-minute drive. 20 maybe 20-minute drive, something, 15-20-minute drive. But he would ride his skateboard instead of, drive, because he didn't have a car, from his house to his job. And then because he was already in Camden where I lived, because I didn't have a car or license either, he would hang out with me if it wasn't during school hours. And it was just, I saw his apartment one time because my sister dropped him off there, and it was an apartment house, a little house. And I've seen it since because his mom lives there again, but because she's, been divorced and then remarried and then divorced and then remarried and then divorced a couple times since then. And actually multiple times since I've been married to him. So but it was like it was just empty. The house was just cold and dark and empty and dusty and dirty. Like, it was not a home. There was no furniture, there was no nothing. And that's where he was. That was his home. That was where he lived. And he would probably invite other teenage boys over and smoke marijuana and get himself into trouble. And that was that. That was his life, right? And then at some point he couldn't live there anymore. I think because the relationship fell apart, she had to go back to her house. And then he became homeless, living on the streets of Camden, just couch surfing. Whose house can I stay at tonight? Whose house can I stay at tonight? And then he stayed with a friend of ours who's much older, named Joan Lacey, for a while, because she felt bad for him, so he slept on her couch. He stayed with his friends, other friends that he's had, on their couches. He went from couch to couch, and then he ended up being in Rome, which is a half hour from Camden, but an hour from where we live now. And because I moved a half hour north, Rome is like a half hour of Camden, and Rome's like a half hour south of Camden. So he was living in Rome for a little while, and so he got a job at the Salvation Army, okay? And that's where he met. We had broken up at this point, and I was with Bobby, and I probably already had 2 kids at this point with Bobby, because Bobby poked holes in a condom and got me pregnant with my daughter when I was 18. And then the mini pill failed me when my daughter was 4 months old, and I got pregnant a second time. So 7.5 months after losing my virginity to Bobby, I had my first daughter, a premature baby. And then 13 months after that, I had my second daughter. So within 20 months of losing my virginity, I had 2 children. It's not even 2 years. 24 months would be 2 years. It was within 17 months. 17 months. It was in 20 months, because 13 plus 7. Well, his co-worker at the Salvation Army was a girl named Amanda, who he met, who was living, I need my door closed. She was living with her family member at the time, not taking care of herself correctly. And he started bugging her to try to get an apartment and go down to welfare and ask for an apartment, right? So she went and did that. And then he credits getting her out of her family member's house and getting her an apartment with him. But welfare paid for the apartment, right? It was Liberty Gardens, which is this housing thing where there's all these like 2-bedroom upstairs and downstairs houses like squished together, and it could be free, or it could be it's income based basically, and it's really, really dirty and really dangerous, right? And also, a few months into dating, he finds out she has a daughter that she didn't tell him about. Okay? And let me think about her age real quick, because it's a little hard to remember her age. I believe that she is 16 now. I am not certain on this, but I believe that she's 16 now. And so if you take that from 2021, that means that she was probably born in 2005. And at this point, they got together in 2010 or something along those lines, right? And so a few months into dating, he finds out that she finds out she has a 5-year-old. Okay? And I knew she was in between 5 and 6, so I was just guessing. Like, I'm trying to figure it out. I think she must have been 5 though. And he said he was mad that she never told him, and she said she didn't think she had to tell him because they weren't in a serious relationship yet, and that she told him as soon as they got serious because, after he got the apartment, helped her get the apartment, he wanted to move into that apartment and not tell welfare that he was moving into the home so that they could keep getting free. He also, at that point, started work for Osmos. That's when he got hired for the on-the-road job at Osmos. Okay. So I'm trying to give the whole backstory piece by piece with Matt, and I will give the backstory piece by piece with Bobby as well. But I wanted to give this backstory so that you guys could better understand what transpired. If I don't tell you from the beginning, you guys are going to be like, well, there's some pieces missing, right? And that's what I realized today, that I had to tell from the beginning. And so he moves into the Section 8 housing where he gets a P.O. box, says he isn't living there, and she immediately gets pregnant with Caleb. And he has Caleb with her almost immediately after they get together. She's all pregnant with a baby. And they have Caleb, and they're very new in the relationship, and she takes him to child support court for Caleb because she has to, because she's full on welfare. And he's making $1,500 a week, blowing it like crazy. And she's a gambling addict, so she goes to the casino, and she's also actively cheating on him with the drug dealer that they go through for weed. His name was Randy, and that's who she got with as soon as they broke up. She got with Randy, and he's abusive too. He would beat her up, but she's very abusive. She tried to attack my newborn baby when me and Matt first got married, so she's not a saint either, and I will not pretend she is. She abused both boys of hers that she had with Matthew, which is why I have them. She's a very dangerous person as well, which is why I think Matthew is in love with her, because I think he sees, I don't know, he really is to this day still in love with her, and it hurts me a lot to even admit that, because she's such a horrible person, and I want him to love me for some reason, even though he's so horrible to me. I still, in my heart, I'm like, it burns that he has those feelings for someone so horrible, and he doesn't treat me good, but he'll treat her good. It makes no sense in my brain. Because I'm so good to him, even now. Okay, back to the story. He was living with her, and they were cheating the system and living the high life before they broke up after being together for only a couple years, because he got with me in 2013, got with her in 2010, 2.5 or 2 3/4 years. It was not a full 3 years, because he broke up with her for a little while before we got together in 2013. He started talking to me in the beginning of 2013, trying to get with me in February, and I broke up with my ex for just a month or two, and had gotten back with him and got pregnant in April with my baby. That's why. And then my ex and me broke up again, and then I was like, yeah, you know how we and you were talking about getting back together? Well, I made a mistake, and I got back with my ex, and I'm pregnant, so maybe we shouldn't talk, or maybe we could, like, I don't know. And he was like, no, I'm fine with you being pregnant. And so we started another relationship while I was still pregnant. So that's how it started. And court told him that he could not have his boys. He could get his boys 3 days a week as soon as he had a suitable place for them to go. And he was like, well, Megan has a 3-bedroom trailer, and she's only using 2 of those bedrooms because her daughters share a room, and then her baby's in her room with her. I could maybe get her spare room for my boys. That's what I think he thought, and I think that's why he pressured me so hard to move in, because he was living in my house by January of 2014. My baby was born on January 1st, 2014, and before that month was over, he had proposed to me and moved in. And I had a newborn baby. And this was the time that his ex actually tried to attack my baby. I was feeding him in the back seat of the car. I was leaning against the back seat of the car, standing up, trying to breastfeed him. Well, we were doing a pick up or drop off, and she stormed at me and tried to attack my infant, my newborn. This was in January, and my husband had to fight her off while she punched him in the face repeatedly. And I was the one who was taking care of our boys primarily at this point, 3 days a week, because Matthew had quit his on-the-road job so that he could get them 3 days a week, because they told him he couldn't have them unless he quit it, and he had gotten a regular job at a smoke shop called Vapors, and so, but he would never come home afterwards, because he said that, I don't know, but it was in Rome, we're an hour away from our home, and I don't know what he was up to or why he left hours early and got home hours late. I don't know if it was drugs, if it was cheating, if he was just hanging out, but I was alone with the boys literally all day, and I didn't even know them yet. 3 days a week, right from the start of our marriage, right from the very start. And I had, of course, my girls, who were 4 and 3, and he had his 2 and 1 year olds, and I had my newborn. Think about that. 4, 3, 2, 1, newborn. Also think about the fact that my girls are both autistic. One has ADHD, one has sensory processing disorder, and his boys are severely, severely special needs with reactive attachment disorder, ODD, ADHD, ASD, different combinations depending on which boy you're talking about, but the amount, I have PTSD from raising those boys because of how difficult it was, and I was alone. And then I had my breastfed newborn, and I'm autistic and disabled. I was on disability when he moved in. So that's how our relationship started, and I just wanted to bring that to light real quick. It took me 30 minutes because I know I can't tell the full story. I can't even get into why he doesn't have clothes in one of my stories until I get to this. At this point, he does have clothes, but he ends up going back to work at Osmos that August of 2014, he moved in January 2014. He goes back to Osmos on the road at 2014 after court is all settled, and he's got his boys 3 days a week, and I continue getting the boys 3 days a week. And he goes out of town. All but 4 days at the end of the month, and he comes home. And then I also became pregnant in November of 2014. And the weekend that I became pregnant was the first time I ever experienced abuse from him, physical abuse, physical violence. And I left him in the middle of the night and got a ride home at 3 a.m. I traveled out to his hotel room at 3 a.m. I left, and I went home, and I thought I was never going to speak to him again. And little did I know that I actually that day had conceived twins. And I did speak to him again, because a few hours later, he called me crying. He said, "Where did